to compete, grow, and lead. Get the Irish advantage for your business. It's the Irish advantage. It's innovation. It's collaboration. It's Irish technology companies driving progress across the globe. It keeps Audi out in front with cross-border connectivity. Designs the automated financial solution that lets Primark stay at the cutting edge. It harnesses blockchain technology to empower women's world banking. Lights up Philips Hue's business with innovative e-commerce solutions. And builds the intuitive project management software that ensures the Special Olympics is a runaway success. Enterprise Ireland is helping the world's most dynamic brands source innovation from over 1,000 Irish digital technology companies, helping them to compete, grow, and lead. Get the Irish advantage for your business.
Karina, I have the video on. Great, thanks for that video, Bachi. Yeah. We'll start in a minute. We have a few more folks on the call. Kevin, good afternoon. I just wanted to make sure I was in the right time zone. How are you?
Good.
Great.
How's the weather in the Philippines today?
A little cloudy.
Yeah.
Still warm.
Yes, it's always warm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where are you based, Kevin?
Based in Singapore.
In Singapore, right. Very
So
good.
I'm a relative newcomer to the region here. I came out about 14 months ago and started really well pre-pandemic, and it was great. I was getting out to the region, and myself and Janine actually had a planned trip to the Philippines, and we've unfortunately had to cancel that. And as we all know, the last 3 to 6 months has been a bit of a roller coaster.
Yes, indeed. And somewhat less travel.
Yeah, well, a lot less travel. And Singapore is 20 kilometers wide by 20 kilometers long, so it's a lot less.
Very good.
Okay, it's 1 p.m. everyone. Thank you very much. So maybe we can start. Bart, you made it in time. Perfect, Bart. You're on. We have Bart of EdgeTier with us. Good morning, Bart. I hope you have a cup of coffee like we asked Andrew and Mike to have their own cups ready. Good morning.
Yes, a nice strong cup of coffee. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, we're about to start. We'll start our session, and I'll just kick it off. So this is Roger Salazar from HIMAP. We have today our folks, colleagues from Ireland, teaching and learning a little bit more about BPO technology solutions that they have for the future. We'll learn more about their products and services. We have a panelist. We have Vince Remo, we have JL Botor with us, and we look forward to hearing from our folks on the different products and solutions. Just to set the stage for this. Before the coronavirus pandemic started, technology has always been changing and it's always been increasing, right? But I think post-COVID, it has accelerated so much more. The pandemic has actually reset what we view as the art of the possible. It has really changed. There's a lot more openness today about how companies need to be a little bit more agile and the need to focus on innovation. Already, like I'll give you an example: remote working or work from home, as we call it here in the Philippines, it's not unusual anymore. It's becoming the new normal, right? And it's hard to see actually people returning to work post-COVID. Right, when this is all, people will return to work, but people working 5 days a week, that might change, especially with how the pandemic has forced a lot of companies to look and embrace change, as we are. Other things also we see with work from home. We see a lot more collaborative technologies and tools that are being available. All of a sudden, I didn't know there, back then all we had was Cisco WebEx and GoToMeeting. Right now you've got Zoom, you've got Teams, you've got all these other formats to actually collaborate and work closely with each other, right? So in industries like healthcare, for example, telemedicine is so important now, and it's becoming not anymore a nice to have, but it's more of a requirement now. I guess the real challenge is really how to get people to accept and believe in the change that's happening in the world today, especially in healthcare. Physicians, they've realized that technology can actually help a lot in what they do and the work that they do. So I think having agility and being the quick to adapt in different situations is going to be important. These will be the companies that will not only survive but flourish in this new normal as we move to the future. And another area is look at the big tech companies, the big technology companies, and they've known this for a while. The digitalization of the world today destroys and eliminates all the barriers between industries. For instance, you look at Google, Tencent, and Alibaba. Now they operate across healthcare, transportation, entertainment, insurance, advertising. So there's really, the barriers are being disrupted. There's a lot of change that's happening, and companies that adapt and are open to look at these new products and services are going to be those that will survive and flourish in this new normal. So I think organizations should take advantage of this accelerating technology and societal changes, and about the ability to create agility in their systems, agility in their delivery, and agility in their people. So I hope today's conversation on new technology solutions from our colleagues from Ireland will be interesting to all our members. I'd like to introduce our moderator. Our moderator today is no other than Jonathan De Lusuryaga, and everyone here knows Jonathan. Jonathan, as you know, is the 6 years president of PSIA. He's also CEO of Spring Valley Technology. Jonathan is also a former president of the NICP. And I don't know, Jonathan, I have a long list of things I need to read here, but maybe at the interest of having you have more time on the floor, I'll turn it over to you. But thank you very much, Jonathan, for moderating this event today in behalf of our colleagues, our members, and our friends from Ireland. Jonathan?
Thank you so much, Roger. It's always a pleasure to be part of the HIMAP community. This time around, we've got two communities coming together, the Irish technology community, as well as the healthcare information management community here in the Philippines. This is my second day to do something for HIMAP, and I'm quite intimate with the entire community of healthcare, even at its infancy, when it was still known to be the Medical Transcription Industry Association of the Philippines. So I have a very short opening spiel, primarily because we've got a lot of ground to cover for this afternoon's discussion. Let me just start it off by saying COVID-19 actually came with it magnifying glass. So it magnified our strengths as individuals and organizations, and it also magnified our weaknesses. So it's quite appropriate that we're discussing now for this afternoon solutions that just might help solve the problems that we've encountered, most especially with the varied forms of community quarantine that has been implemented here in the Philippines. And to open this, I'd like to call on a very special guest and a friend. So he is the director of ASEAN for Enterprise Ireland, working with a dedicated team of market advisors based in Singapore. Enterprise Ireland is the Irish Government Trade and Technology Office responsible for the development and growth of Irish enterprises in world markets. They work in partnership with Irish enterprises to help them start, grow, innovate, and win export sales in global markets. In his role as ASEAN Director with Enterprise Ireland, he works with a team of dedicated advisors, as I mentioned, to scale Irish client companies. Without further ado, Please welcome Mr. Kevin Ryan, Director for ASEAN of Enterprise Ireland. Kevin, floor is yours.
Thank you, Jonathan. And as Jonathan mentioned, my name is Kevin Ryan, and I'm Director here based in Singapore for the ASEAN region for Enterprise Ireland. So I'm really excited about this collaboration with HIMAP. And I also wanted to extend a sincere thank you to Roger, Bachi, and the entire team in HIMAP for organizing this event and giving us the opportunity to talk to you today. I'd also like to thank from my own team here, Janine and Tiernan, who have been coordinating with the HIMAP team over these last number of weeks. So thanks again to the guys for doing that. Also, just to say thank you to everybody who's dialing into today's panel discussion for BPO technology solutions of the future. And I trust this will be a very engaging discussion today. I'd like to also extend a special word of thanks to the guest panelists, Vincent and JL, who have taken time out of their busy schedules to join us as well. For those of you that don't know much about Enterprise Ireland, we are the Trade and Investment Board of the Irish Government, and we work closely with Irish businesses back home in Ireland and founders as they and support them on their journey to start, innovate and scale internationally. We have about 4,000 companies across multiple sectors, and today I'm delighted you're going to hear from some of the innovative client companies operating in the BPO sectors. I suppose one of the purposes of today's panel event is to give these innovative Irish companies the opportunity to present their businesses to a wider network of friends and contacts in an open and relaxed environment. I know the companies that will present today will greatly value your depth of experiences within the BPO sectors in the Philippines, as you all understand all too well how complex it can be for the companies to scale and do business in the region. I'm also conscious it's an early start for Mike, Andrew and Bart back in Ireland. So I think I'll leave it there. And just to add from myself and the entire Enterprise Ireland team between here and Singapore and Vietnam, thank you all again for joining in and making this session an engaging one. And I'll hand you back over to Jonathan now. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And we are all looking forward here in the Philippines for more collaboration between our nations.
Look forward.
The Philippines is very much known in the BPO space being the contact center capital of the world. And as we try to move on more diverse and complex work, moving up the value chain, so to speak, it is quite important for us to be aware of technologies that are already out there that we could actually use in terms of the service delivery excellence that the country is known for. So first on my list is the Chief Technology Officer and founder of EdgeTier. Please welcome Dr. Bart Lehane. Bart is the CTO and co-founder, and he graduated from Dublin City University in Ireland with a degree in electronic engineering, followed by a PhD in the area of video and audio analysis, focused on machine learning and statistical analysis. Since completing his PhD, he has had senior software development roles, research, product management across a range of industries. At EdgeTier, Bart looks at how technology can solve the problems of customer care centers and bring cutting-edge research, commercial reality for EdgeTier clients. So I'm pretty certain that our audience this afternoon is very eager on how EdgeTier could actually help enhance the customer experience for their respective clients. Please welcome Dr. Bart Lehane. Bart, floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much for that introduction, Jonathan. And really nice to be here. Thank you everybody from the HIMAP community for welcoming us here today. Before I start, can you just check everyone can see my screen? A nice EdgeTier and HIMAP logo should be there for everybody.
Yes, we can.
Perfect, perfect. So thank you very much. That was a lovely introduction, Jonathan. So what I'd like to talk about today is EdgeTier and the role that we play in helping customer care, customer service organizations embrace and use AI and automation to improve their overall performance. And one thing I want to make really clear is, and I hope it's something that everybody takes away from today, is the view in EdgeTier about how AI should be used in customer care. So there's a lot of hype, a lot of discussion about AI, about how it replaces people or removes people. One of the core beliefs of EdgeTier is that AI and automation is a tool to allow organizations to become better. And really AI, the sweet spot, the important thing of AI is to allow people perform their jobs better. So we believe quite strongly that the best parts of customer care, the best parts of good customer service are the human parts. So removing people from customer care is a bad idea. So everything that we do, everything that we build is around using artificial intelligence, using automation to help the people working in customer care organizations perform their jobs better. And that may mean making a poor performing customer service agent turn into a high performing customer service agent. That may mean taking a manager who needs to understand what's happening in the contact center and allow them to understand in seconds or minutes what's happening, rather than them having to take hours or days to understand what people are talking about in their contact center. So I'd like to talk about two areas. One, how AI and technology can help customer service agents and the people answering queries from customers. And secondly, how AI and automation can help managers and leaders who are actually monitoring and understanding overall organizations. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is how AI and automation can help agents. And one of the things that is pretty important when you look at the role for AI and automation in customer care is firstly to understand what it is people actually do. So we spend a lot of time working with primarily text-based channels, so email, chat, social media channels, and just observing what it is agents spend their time doing and looking for ways that AI and automation can help them in their day-to-day life. So here's an example of a timing that we did with a customer service agent who was handling, in this case, it was an email query. So you can see on the timeline there, it took the agent about 7 minutes to handle this query. It was kind of a complex question that came in from a customer, and they were having an issue and the customer was a little bit angry and annoyed about something. So you can see at the start, the agent read the query, they understood that the customer was angry. They then spent some time researching the customer, looking up information in various different systems. And then they spent some time composing a response. So they had to look up some billing information, they had to look up the customer's historic data, and then they had to draft an email back to that customer. Because the customer was annoyed and angry, the agent spent a little bit of time tailoring the response to make sure it was right, make sure that it went out and it was a good quality response. And then the agent spent some time wrapping up the query, performing some administrative tasks. So this is an example for email. We see this in every contact center across email, across chat, even across calls as a similar pattern of what agents are actually doing. So to understand the role of AI and automation, the first thing to do is look at, well, what shouldn't it do? What are the really human bits of this that you don't want to remove and you don't want to take out? And actually, when you break it down, there are two key parts of this that actually only humans can perform. So despite all the hype about AI, it's still not good at those human things, that empathy, that understanding of a customer, and that tailoring of a response or customizing a response based on the understanding of the customer's mental state. This is something that's, I think, is important in every industry, but it's particularly important in healthcare industry, where many people who are contacting customer care may be distressed and they may be in a stressful situation. So it's very important that customer service agents are not removed from that understanding, that sympathy, that empathy of the customer situation. So these are very human bits that absolutely have to be done by people and done well by people. But the rest of it actually doesn't need to be done by a human. The rest of it is just stuff that the agent needs to do in order to answer the query. All right, looking up information, copying and pasting data, administrative tasks. They're not things that actually help the customer in any way, but they're things that the agent has to do. So at Edge here, we remove that white space. We remove those bits that the agent has to do that isn't really contributing towards good quality customer care. And we allow the agent focus more on delivering high quality, personalized customer care back to the customer by removing the rest of the tasks that the agent has to perform. And this is really the key enabler, the key use of AI and automation. It's in removing that additional stuff that the agent has to do. So how do we do that? Well, we've built a software system that works across any text-based channel, so email, chat, social, and so on. Every message that comes in and out of the customer service organization is analyzed with a very high degree of accuracy across any number of languages. So we understand what customers are asking about. We then, once we understand what the customer is asking about, we can automate tasks on behalf of the agent. So we can perform tasks like, if the customer is asking about a billing query, we'll look up billing information and make sure that that's ready and presented for the agent so they don't have to go searching for it in multiple systems. We can automate things like the data protection steps to make sure that the customer is who they say they are. Again, a repetitive task that we want to take away from the agent. We can also automate things like the wrap-up process, just to make sure that the agent is just focused on delivering good quality customer care. The system can also go as far as suggesting and drafting responses. So if we understand what the customer is asking about, we can actually suggest messages to the agent or suggest chat responses to the agent. So if a customer asks about their account balance, we can look that up and present that to the agent straight away. And it can also draft emails on behalf of the agent, which the agent can obviously change and customize, but we bring that agent 80–90% of the way through responding to the customer. And all that is wrapped up in a software system that's designed to use AI, to use automation. So all of the user interface is designed to take advantage of these new technologies that are now becoming commonplace in customer care. So to illustrate what happens when you embrace this approach, I'll show you some results from a sample client. So one of the key improvements that you will see straight away from adopting this technology is that the handling times reduce dramatically and performance increases dramatically. So in this particular client, who are a worldwide travel company, their performance on email pretty much doubled overnight when using this technology. So they went from taking an average of 6 minutes to answer every email to only taking just over 3 minutes. So a huge step change improvement in performance. Similarly on chat, they saw almost a 25–30% increase in performance, meaning they were able to get through queries a lot quicker using this technology. They also saw a large increase in customer satisfaction scores. Because the AI is guiding the agent through responding, it uses best practice responses. It ensures that the quality of response is always very, very high when going out to the customer. So a huge change is possible. This technology doesn't just deliver an incremental improvement. It's not, improving performance by 5% or 10%. This is, a step change. A huge gain in productivity is possible, and a huge gain in performance is possible. I'd like to switch gears now a little bit before I finish, just to talk about how some of that same AI technology can be used to help people monitoring contact centers to understand what's going on. And this is a key thing that we've seen since COVID has come in, that lots of people are now working from home. It's a lot harder for managers in contact centers to understand what's happening, what's going on in the contact center, because their teams are so distributed. So we have a product called Watchtower, which monitors all of the interactions that are going on in your contact center, and then learns what normal looks like and looks for anomalies. So our AI engine is consistently monitoring all of the messages coming in and out of the contact center and looking for unusual topics. So if you imagine these are all of the chat messages that are coming in and out of a contact center, our AI is smart enough to understand that it's kind of unusual for people to be talking about things like payment errors on websites. So the AI is monitoring all of these messages and says, hey, this is something strange. This is an unusual topic being discussed. Somebody should be alerted about this. So the AI can then create alerts that go to senior management to say, And you know what? It's 12:30 on a Friday morning. Usually people don't talk about getting payment errors on websites, but now we've got an influx of people talking about it in the last 5 minutes. I'm going to alert somebody. So this is an example, a real example from a client of ours where they had a payment issue on their website, and the first person to learn about that issue was the head of customer care, who was able to send a message out to the floor to let them know, okay, there's some issues on our website. Here are the steps you need to respond to customers with. But he was also able to quite smugly go to the head of IT and tell the head of IT, here's a list of 30 issues that customers are having on our website. Can you go and fix it? So really bringing that level of understanding and that really fast tracking of issues up to managers very, very quickly so that they can resolve them very easily. Again, a huge game changer in terms of applying AI. So I think I'm almost at my time. I'll just quickly reference that at EdgeTier we work with a number of organizations throughout the world in helping them bring their customer care up a level and embrace AI and automation with our technology. We're also lucky enough to have won a number of awards along the way for our use of AI, which is always nice. And I'll leave you with my contact details. I'm always looking for opportunities to show off our software. So showing it in real life and showing a demonstration of how the technology works is always better than talking about it in slides. So if anyone would like to reach out for a demo, my email address is there, bart@edgetier.com, and our website is there as well, where you can fill in the various forms to contact us. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and thank you for everyone for having us today. And I'll pass you over to the other presenters in Spearline and Thin Scale to hear their presentations as well.
Thank you very much, Bart. Congratulations on the great tech that you guys from HTR are producing. Certainly of very huge interest for the contact center operators here, both doing the traditional customer service as well as those that are focused on healthcare information. So we'll hear more about HTR from Bart in the Q&A portion of this afternoon's discussion. But let me proceed with our next speaker. The next speaker is actually turning out to be a very good friend of mine, primarily because this is the second tour of duty that we've had. It's also indicative of how interested the Irish technology community is in terms of forging a bond with the Philippine IT BPM community. So he is the Chief Customer Officer of Thin Scale. He has a 30-year career in the technology industry across Europe and the USA. This included a 10-year period building out Dell's European sales operations, taking the UK SMB from a $90 million unit to a $1 billion division. In this last year alone, he has worked with the CIOs of the world's leading BPO, integrating Thin Scale's award-winning unique BYOD, or Bring Your Own Device, and WHA, or Work at Home solution into their work at home operations, most recently driving a 5x quarter-over-quarter growth. Please welcome Mr. Andrew McNeil.
JDL, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. That's very kind of you. And it is indeed wonderful to be doing webinars on a more frequent basis together with you. And also great to be doing stuff with Bart, who I've known since he got going. So it feels like I'm amongst friends today.
It's a reunion.
Thank you. Sorry?
It's turning out to be a reunion now. So
yeah, indeed. I'm also struck by the way our photos on the slides always look like we're really smart, and then we turn up in person and all these wonderful suits and ties have disappeared. But thank you so much to HIMAP for inviting us here today. Real privilege to be able to present to you. Thank you also so much to the Enterprise Ireland team, to Kevin, Tiernan and Janine for all their work in helping us set this up. Real privilege to be working with you, and thank you all so much for coming along. And thank you to Bachi for her organisation. I must say one of the things that Bachi had done particularly well, I thought, was to reach out to you all and ask what sort of questions you might have. And she'd sent that through to us. And I must say there are some wonderful questions there. I'm conscious we're not going to get to all of them today. I've included my email address at the bottom of the slides. So if you're interested in any of those questions that we're not able to dig into, please do email me. You've got some great questions for us specifically, but also more generically. One of the questions, though, that was there was the whole issue of what is the best technology to help security and privacy for work at home? And whoever is asking that, I have to say, I think that's an absolutely fabulous question. I was spending some time with one of the world's biggest healthcare providers, quite a number of meetings over a period of time, about 2 months ago. And we were meeting with about 30 or 40 people from security, operations, data privacy, legal, compliance, admin, ops. The key issue for this company was security, 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 and compliance. And in everything else they were looking at, the first place they defaulted to was the whole issue of security. So for BPOs who are going to supply services to this healthcare company, security is absolutely top of the thing. So I think this is a fabulous question, and that's where I'm going to start. So Bachi, perhaps you could move us on to the next slide. So, and I think the answer to this particular question is thin scale, because that is exactly what we do. We supply technology to help security and privacy for work at home. But it's not just us who think that. These BPO companies also think thin scale are the best solution to help security and privacy at home. And these companies between them represent some 700,000 employees globally, and about $9.5 billion in terms of revenue. Equally, it's not just these companies, but also this industry analyst. And it was lovely to be on the last webinar with JDL and to have Frost and Sullivan there as well. And we have just been awarded this 2020 Global Emerging Technology Leadership Award, and it's an award that's focused on contact center software. So Bachi, perhaps you could move to the next slide. So what does this technology do? It provides complete endpoint security. And endpoint security is different to what antivirus and other cyber protections you might be familiar with. Endpoint security means protecting every point where your company data is exposed to the outside world. For example, antivirus doesn't protect you from an agent copying your company data to their own PC, or indeed surfing websites outside during working hours and having bad data practices that accidentally expose you to risk. That's how our solution's different and why it's so popular and successful. With ThinScale, the security is the same, whether that's on a 5-year-old laptop in an agent's living room or at a desk in a call center. No matter what, the security is world-class, and you can win business in the most demanding sectors globally. Now, as I pointed out there, Gartner in a recent report have pointed out there is a significant risk for BPOs who have put in lots of temporary tools in order to get everybody home. But they haven't adjusted the security controls to reflect the fact that this has now become normal. And Gartner see this as a risk and something that people need to address. Furthermore, because our security system is software defined, not only can it manage any Windows device type, whether it's agent owned or corporate owned, but more importantly, it can be deployed extremely rapidly, allowing for hundreds of remote agents to be onboarded in a week without any of the difficulty of hardware device shipment. And indeed, one of you was asking, how long does it take the solution to deploy? And if you have a 1 to 2 month setup in terms of evaluation, we've had customers who really understand the process deploy thousands in a week. But typically people would deploy 200 to 300 in a week, reaching about 1,000 at the end of a month. So, and it would typically only take a few minutes per agent. Now, it also has a validation tool. This allows technology device validation during the recruitment process. This means that you can ensure that candidates that are applying through your recruitment process are going to have the right technology so that when you start to onboard them, you know that the whole thing is going to work appropriately, that they've got the right technology and the right internet infrastructure. These validation controls are continuous. So it helps ensure that agents don't do things like purchase short-term, high-speed bandwidth packages that then expire after a period of time, and now you're left with a degraded customer service. Because it's continuously checking whether or not the agent's device is operating at that high-speed internet connection. Now, as everybody has pointed out, PCI, HIPAA, and GDPR compliance is absolutely critical, and no more so in the health industry. And finally, secure remote worker is now increasingly being recognized as a global standard for securing agents' PCs at home. So that's a very broad, very swift articulation of the key bits and pieces that it actually does. But every situation is slightly different, and really to explore it, we would need to really have a longer session and work with your technical people to understand how it would apply to your situation. Actually, if you can move on to the next slide. And so finally, I thought I would just take a few moments to view it from the perspective of our customers. A month ago, I was doing an interview with the global CIO for Teleperformance. He is responsible for some 300,000 agents worldwide. That seems such a huge number, I can barely get my head around it. What he said to me was that the banking, healthcare, and government sectors understand the benefits of bring your own device, of agents using their own devices. They understand the benefits of speed, the benefits of deployment, the benefits of cost of not actually holding the cost of the PC, of the Windows license, and so on. However, he said to me, they can find it scary. But if anything had put them at ease, it was the partnership that Teleperformance have with ThinScale. And that felt to me an incredible endorsement from probably the most senior CIO in the industry. They see it as a way of giving confidence to their customers and helping them to win more business. And as you can see from the quote from his work at home director, it has revolutionized their work at home model. I was talking with the Senior Vice President of Technology for ICOR earlier this week to see if he could come and join us, because I thought it'd be fun for us to have somebody who was using it to talk with. Unfortunately, he's been very busy. For ICOR, though, the benefits were to get to a place where they had complete security for their work at home program, that they had that kind of ease of deployment and fast agent onboarding that I'd already talked about. But on top of that, the key for them was having this capacity to centrally control and manage a wide estate of devices, both that were BYOD and corporately owned, and that capacity to deploy the connectivity and applications to their home agents with the same security controls as if they were at our locations. And I think Marcella's quote there really sums up their experience. This has been an incredibly rapid tour of what we do, how we do it, but I hope it's given you a little bit of a flavor, and I hope it will encourage you to actually explore it a bit more. All of you have asked some really fabulous questions that you've directed us, and I'd love to explore some of those questions. Do feel free to contact me directly, or maybe they will pop up at the question and answer session later on. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I'm now going to hand back to JDL.
Thank you, Andrew. It's always a pleasure hearing about the developments in ThinScale. ICOR has been a very huge operator here in the Philippines, and glad to know both Teleperformance and ICOR have significant footprint here in the Philippines, and I'm glad to know that both are actually clients of ThinScale. So
and indeed, JDL are using it in the Philippines.
So that's excellent news then, because then it gives the Philippine business unit an edge in terms of making sure that security of their particular clients are actually in place. So we'll get back to you, Andrew, later on with a couple of questions. Allow me to introduce our third speaker and presenter. He has more than 20 years of management experience. He has worked in senior leadership roles with Voice Data Service Specialist PGI and with data storage giant EMC. He has been an active supporter of SME development through involvement with Plato Ireland, a network connecting SMEs locally and across Europe. He also has worked as a non-executive director in both non-government offices and commercial enterprises, and has been an active and enthusiastic participant in regional and industry groups in Europe. Please welcome on your screen the Chief Marketing Officer of Spearline, Mr. Mike Palmer. Mike, floor is yours.
Thank you, Jonathan, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to the HIMAP membership and to the organizers for organizing the event today. I think there's actually, listening to Bart and listening to Andrew, there's a nice synergy between the three organizations and the three technologies that we're bringing to you today. There's the text-based work that Bart and the team are doing. Andrew's work from home technology is very critical. And at Spearline, we're going to talk a little bit about the telecommunications infrastructure and how we bring voice and other communication services into the contact center, and they are critical. So at Spearline, we provide telecommunications quality assurance tools. Contact centers are, by their very nature, heavy users of telecommunications services, using global inbound services or contact center services, whatever the carrier might label those as, to backhaul calls from many places into a single central location or into a network of contact center nodes, perhaps. So time of day call routing, skills-based routing, or simple site-to-site load balancing, these all create kind of complex dynamics that are challenges for the support organizations that look after the contact center infrastructure. These complexities in call routing actually can impact call connection rates, and they can impact the quality of the actual call as it takes place, and that's the audio quality as we hear it. And you're probably familiar with some of that. And that call quality, it actually impacts the customer experience, and it creates frustration for customers if they can't get through, full stop. It creates frustration for customers and agents if they're trying to hold a conversation, and that conversation can't be held effectively because of just poor audio quality on the channel. So Bachi, if we move on to the next slide. So the term contact center, it's largely been replaced, or has replaced, I should say, call center. Originally, we spoke about call, and the phone call was at the center of what our agents were kind of looking after. Customers would phone in, and their needs would be addressed. So a lot of that contact center contact remains being focused on the telephone call, the humble telephone conversation. People do like to talk to people, and they like to talk to people especially when they're looking at some kind of an expensive purchase, or they've got some kind of a complex problem. You know, a good example is maybe when people are dealing with their own financial planning. If they're looking at their pensions and they want to have a discussion with some expert, they prefer to have a personal discussion with a human being rather than maybe using a chat facility. It gets very personal when you're talking about your own financial planning. So the first challenge in a contact center, and any phone call, in fact, is in establishing a connection. And we take for granted that that happens on the networks, but you know, it's not without its own technology issues and its own technology hurdles to be surpassed. So if your business is using toll-free services, if you're using a slightly more complex form, which would be the universal free phone numbers, or if you're using local toll numbers, you want to be sure that these services are actually connecting. And very specifically, you want to be sure that they're connecting to your ACD platform. It does happen that, you know, a lot of moves, adds, and changes take place on the weekends, and our carriers that we use and choose to provide services for us, they make changes, or we make changes in our own infrastructures, And that can result in, suddenly a phone call landing on a place where it's not meant to land. If it's your own mistake through change control, it's likely it's going to land on another part of your own infrastructure, and that's okay. You can manage that. There are situations where a carrier makes a change and suddenly your traffic is being directed to someplace else altogether. It could be to a private residence or to another business. It's human error. These are complex, detailed call routing paths, and things do go wrong. So you want to make sure that they're connecting to you, and you're actually blind to those calls that don't arrive at your contact center. You know nothing about them, and you can't plan for the capacity when you don't see that business coming your way. And when you don't see that business coming your way, that means loss of revenue potentially. It certainly means some customer is a little bit confused if it's a support call and you don't know about their confusion. So that's an issue. With traffic that is coming from all over the world into these centralized locations, it's also worth noting that post-dial delay is a real potential. And post-dial delay is nothing too complex. It's quite simply that kind of eerie silence that we might experience on the line when international calls are being connected. So it's the silence between when you finish dialing and you actually hear the phone ringing. And when it's there, it can create a little bit of confusion for the user or for your customer. And it contributes to a higher abandon rate. That confusion might result in, maybe this isn't actually working for me. I'll hang up and dial again. So we need to be aware of that. Navigating IVR menus actually requires that touch tone transmission. And that touch tone transmission needs to be there so that we can press 1 for sales, 2 for customer support, and deeper into the IVR menu setup. And where callers are connecting across a chain of multiple network providers, signaling can fail. And it is a chain of multiple providers. So although I'm sitting here in Ireland on my network, I may phone a contact center in the Philippines and land on that BPO network. There may be networks in between because our carriers have what are called bilateral agreements. So if there's a capacity crunch with my network provider, they may spill over to, for example, Tele Denmark or Deutsche Telekom on their way to the Netherlands or to the Philippines. And when that happens, you get 3 or 4 or 5 different international carriers in the whole chain of events. So that creates a dynamic where DTMF erodes the touch tone signaling and things can fail. Other factors include advanced call routing that uses caller line identification. And that's where the inbound number is presented. Again, where callers are connected across many network providers, the integrity of that CLI presentation can be an issue. And all of our advanced call routing to agents kind of doesn't serve our purpose. Once we are actually connected so that a conversation can be had, challenges continue. And again, we may have experienced some of that ourselves on the call where, we hear noise in the background or we're not able to hear our callers appropriately and we choose to disconnect and reconnect, trying to establish a better connection. So the audio quality on that channel is important because sometimes it is simply hard to hold a conversation with the quality of the audio channel. We experience these phenomena like echo, distortion of the audio, delayed sound, all kinds of background noises that may not be associated with actually the room that we're in, but are generated across the network. These all contribute to a very poor experience for everybody involved. Many of us here today, in fact, we will have had some experiences in the last months as our world has adjusted to the home office arrangements. We've been doing Google meetings, Zoom meetings, and WebEx. And at the end of the day, I've heard a lot of people describe to me that they have, Zoom fatigue. Zoom has established itself kind of as the verb describing what we do each day. We get out there and we Zoom. But at the end of the day, Zoom fatigue is there because we're concentrating a little bit more in conversations because of these telecommunications phenomenon that are there. So you can imagine at the end of the day, for a contact center agent who's dealing with calls from all over the world, different languages being presented to them, different background noises, they must be wrecked at the end of the shift. And in conferencing applications, where multiple participants are present, when multiple participants in a call have poor audio quality, it quickly brings chaos to a meeting. So I was pleased earlier to see the chat come across in this session that if we're not actually speaking, please go ahead and mute our lines. I think we've all learned that kind of etiquette. We may have learned it pre-COVID, but those of us who are certainly heavy users of conferencing applications today are using it quite regularly and are capable of muting now. And it's also seen, I think, in our social lives that maybe we're doing conference calls with friends and family who might not be regular users of these types of solutions. We're going through that learning curve with other parts of our communities as well, because the noise that gets injected in calls it is a challenge, and we want to work through that. Studies have actually shown that the credibility of a speaker's message declines with reduced audio quality. So think about that. The credibility declines as the audio quality declines. So if you have agents that are giving a sales pitch, you want the very best environment for them. And that audio channel is absolutely going to be key. Okay, Bachi, if you move on to the next slide. So at Spearline, we actually offer a software as a service solution. And this software as a service solution originated in testing international toll-free services. So international toll-free services, differing from domestic toll-free, or your traditional off-the-shelf toll-free, it varies because we're crossing different regulatory zones. The network connections are more complex because we're going through international interconnects. In a past life, I was actually a Spearline customer, and I had my own toll-free problems. Before being a marketing person, I was responsible for network operations in a conferencing business. As Jonathan mentioned, I was with PGI for several years. While I was there, adding new or changing existing international toll-free services was always a challenge. And it's a challenge for anybody when you don't have resources in a given country. And the reason is that if a call center happens to be in Manila and an Irish free phone number is targeting the contact center there, that free phone number cannot be dialed from Manila. You need someone in Ireland to actually make that phone call to understand, is it connecting, is it working properly, and is it configured properly? So I was one of those technology guys that was regularly on problem management calls at all hours of the day, every day of the week, regardless of holidays or what happened to be happening in private life, weddings, funerals, and that kind of thing. And the reason for that is, for those of us in the IT space, you know yourself, change management activities take place at the weekends. Change management activities take place when holidays are happening, because that's an ideal time, because demands on our services and systems are at a low point, so we can implement those changes. And I was also often meeting with customers, and I was meeting with customers to explain what had gone wrong and why things weren't going to go wrong again, because we had put changes in place to ensure that they wouldn't happen again. So problem management and situation management was a key focus for me. Spearline came up with a great solution to help with these toll-free services, and then they evolved that to include inbound toll services as well as outbound calling. And quite significantly, they added the whole idea of audio quality. So we went beyond just testing, was a call connecting to the right point? It was it connecting and connecting well? And I think that was a game changer, and continues to be a game changer for many of our customers. So we have a cloud-based product, but that cloud-based product actually reaches down to physical points of presence in what today is 71 countries. And that range of countries continues to grow as our customers give us feedback about the markets that are of particular interest to them. And I always find it interesting that 71 countries actually represents more than 150 different carriers that we utilize. And that 71 countries, according to the CIA World Factbook, which is quite an interesting space, covers something like 98% of the world GDP. So as far as market opportunity, we've got a huge coverage globally that really supports our customers' needs. And in those points of presence, we have connections with SIP and TDM for fixed line providers, as well as connections to the GSM networks, because more and more applications and more customer contact is done via mobile connectivity. Our product actually allows you to automate the testing and the monitoring of your services via a defined program. You can originate calls from within the countries that are of interest to your business using the call paths that your inbound customers would actually take. And I think that's critical. So it's not a synthesized validation of the services. It's an actual check across the paths that your customers would use. Call detail records, or CDRs, if you're in the telecommunications space, call detail records and event recordings are provided with each and every result. And this supports escalation to carriers with all of the evidence that their technical teams need to address to root cause any faults that are identified. The product can also be used to recreate a problem situation where real-time capture is required for resolution. And this is pretty special. Carriers often close trouble tickets as no fault found when they cannot find evidence of a failed call, a single failed call, mind, across the millions and millions of call records that get generated on their network. So the carriers accumulate all of this log information, and they cannot afford to, or they choose not to, retain all of that data for long periods of time. If you don't actually report the problem in great detail to the carrier community very, very quickly, they're unable to find the call and the call detail for the associated feedback that you have. So I recall with great frustration getting no fault founds or no evidence of failure returned on tickets that we opened. But with the Spearline tool, you get down to the milliseconds, et cetera, when the call took place, identify the call, all the details, and there's no hiding. So the detail that we provide is incredibly valuable to the engineering teams. And most telecommunication managers, remember, are under incredible pressure to reduce costs. And as we strive to reduce costs, carriers often manage to get flexibility on the service levels. So we want the costs and we sacrifice the service levels. So using Spearline with that objective service performance data, we can keep service levels high and we can keep our carriers kind of honest and working for our interests. The carriers become much more aware of quality, issues get fixed much more quickly, and critically, your technical staff will spend less time firefighting and much more time on key projects that advance your cause, you know, help you achieve your goals and keep you competitive in the marketplace. Archie, if you want to move on to the next slide, please. So we talk about the future, and the future is kind of full of all kinds of wonderful new technology changes for each and every one of us. In the world of voice, voice user interfaces and using Amazon Lex and similar technology is really going to change the way our contact centers operate. So voice user interfaces, voice bots, and more, they're bringing even more focus back to voice as a primary communications channel. And studies do show that with reducing audio quality, again, voice-enabled or voice-dependent tools will perform more poorly. And that's critical, and we need to be aware of that. So that technology investment that we'll all be making, it's going to benefit from a more proactive approach to audio quality. And while voice services are critical and will remain critical for most businesses, other modes of communication that also rely on international network transit, those are important as well. And these get great support from Spearline. So while we talk about the future of technology, some of the past will remain in our future. There are approximately 46 million fax machines, according to latest figures I've been given, 46 million in use around the world, supporting critical business processes. And many of these are regulated processes, many in the healthcare industry that support medical record sharing and clinical trial activity. Spearline's Fax Assure gives peace of mind that those business processes are fully functional. SMS messaging is used in many markets to support two-factor authentication and one-time passcodes, and in fact, it's growing. So where individual usage has perhaps moved to other OTT applications like WhatsApp or Viber, SMS has become core to many, many business processes. So to communicate, say, delivery updates and appointment reminders, many more applications are leveraging SMS these days. And SMS Assure from Spearline will help you to proactively monitor your SMS services, make sure that they're working for you and that they're working for your customers as well. So at Spearline, we'd love to hear about your telecommunications challenges and to see how we might help you with those. We'd be delighted to do a demonstration of our platform. We'd be delighted to do a trial of our services using your inbound service numbers, or if you'd like to check your outbound paths or check latency across some of your key network elements. We'd love to talk with you and understand what your interests are, what your challenges are, and help you to work through those. So with that, I'll turn you back over to Jonathan and we'll carry on our discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. Certainly very interesting, as the Philippines still has a huge, significant chunk of voice service offerings. And I'm pretty certain that someone in the audience right now would want to learn more about Spearline's value offering. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about AI, we've talked about work from home solutions, ensuring security, and then we've talked about quality in terms of our connections. And again, just like to reiterate, the Philippines has various touch points with customers all over the world, leveraging some of the technologies that have been presented to us this afternoon. But to get a more local perspective in terms of what's happening on the ground, we have invited two of HIMAP's industry leaders to actually give us a local perspective, and allow me to actually introduce the both of them. The first one is the Vice President and Board of Trustee of HIMAP. He is also a Director and Vice President of Innovation and Development for Advanced World Solutions. He's had 26 years of experience in the IT industry, a software research and development practitioner with a track record in implementing as well as managing successful projects for the Japan market. He was also in charge of starting up their branch office in Western Japan, where he served as a general manager, for almost 5 years. He's a member of the board of directors in Advanced World Systems Incorporated and Advanced World Solutions, and currently serves as the Vice President for Solutions Development for both companies. So please join us in our panel discussion, Mr. Vincent M. Remo.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
And I'd also like to call on an experienced BPO operations practitioner, business development and sales manager with 17 years experience in the healthcare information management BPO space. His core proficiency also includes product conceptualization and development, product rollout, market study and research, and he has been an active mover in the local healthcare outsourcing industry and served as past president and board member of the Healthcare Information Management Association of the Philippines. Please welcome the Business Development Manager for the Healthcare and Insurance Vertical of Quest Technologies Corporation, Mr. J.L. Botor.
Hi everyone, good afternoon.
So let me start with the locals first, if my Irish friends will permit. is it going to be age before beauty or beauty before age? So let me start with Vince. Vince, how's the experience so far in terms of what you're going through, what your company has gone through, and some of the changes that we've seen in the business landscape in the country?
Okay. In the local scene, because of the work from home, of course, we as a software development company we're always on our toes when it comes to technologies, and I can say that this pandemic, this current scenario that we are facing, has actually just reinforced our commitment to be more. How do I say that? To be more versatile and to be more flexible in terms of adapting to new technologies. In our company, for example, within the first 2 weeks of the declaration of the community quarantine, we were able to shift from working from office to working from home. And to to stress the point of the presentations this afternoon, infrastructure as well as information security and productivity solutions were really the key points to make this happen. So I guess today's presentation, those are really very, very timely. And I can see that even in our company, we have had a similar experience of being able to cope up with the challenges of working from home through all of these solutions that were presented today.
Thanks for your insights, Vince. JL, is the experience for Point West pretty much the same?
Yeah.
Before you answer, may I ask Vince and JL to, these are very good-looking gentlemen, Andrew. So could you please turn on your cameras, please? So here.
Anyway, to continue, I think similar to Vince, there's really a lot of preparations also done by Point West. That prior to the lockdown, we're also able to transition 100% work from home. That basically covers, our IT services and also our BPO services. Now, going into the topic, I could see that there's really a lot of touch points in terms of the technology discussed this afternoon on how Point West is delivering services. Though we do not have a dedicated voice operations, basically our voice services is stuck in both in our IT services when we deliver software development to clients abroad, and also in our BPO services. We're in the healthcare BPO processes, both in the revenue cycle and also in the pharma life sciences. There's really a lot of interactions from the team to the US counterparts or any other locations across the globe. And we're basically using what we have in the system, and we have not basically looked into some technologies presented this afternoon on how we can best optimize, of course, the telecoms, and also on the work from home setup. We're basically utilizing what's being recommended by our own data privacy group in ensuring that there would be security inside. But looking at the AI on the side of our first speaker, Dr. Bart, we've seen that prior to how this AI evolved, 11 to 12 years ago, I think you started your spiel with what the history of HIMAP was. So it's really more on the medical transcription. And 11, 12 years ago, there's already a lot of technology being developed on the AI side. And if you would recall, there's the automated speech recognition technology. It really wiped out a lot of resources for the medical transcription, but also created another breed of people who is going to do speech recognition output editing. So we see that, as these technology provide us with the arm to better off our services, I think on the call center side, we need to see how this will also pan out and basically, create the evolution also of our call center operators.
Thank you, JL. This pandemic has made us develop a very myopic mindset, especially during the during the time when an enhanced community quarantine was actually declared in our country. So, our concern about what's going on in other parts of the world has more or less been eliminated, because now we're looking at what's happening in our barangay, what's happening in our city, and what's happening in our respective region. And it's always very healthy for us to have a conversation with other folks from different parts of the globe. One of the things that I would like to throw to Bart is, since your company is involved in artificial intelligence, most especially when it comes to customer touch points, are there certain trends that you're seeing right now in terms of where this thing is really going?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of trends, some of which have been accelerated in the last few months. I think one of the key trends that we're seeing, and initially when AI came out, everybody had the same thought: great, we can make chatbots and we can stop people from contacting, and nobody ever needs to talk to anybody else again. And I think we're seeing a big, strong backlash against that now. I think people realize very quickly that human-to-human contact is very, very important, not just in the healthcare sector, in every sector. Even if you're having a problem with your washing machine or you're having a problem with some technology, you still want, in some cases, when there's an actual problem, you want to talk to a person. So we're seeing AI be used a lot more now to help people and to work in that way. We're also seeing a little bit of a shift in the kinds of customer care agents that are being employed. And as AI and automation take over the repetitive tasks, you're not necessarily looking for customer service agents that are extremely diligent and will perform tasks straight away. You're actually looking for customer service agents who have high social and emotional intelligence and who are able to understand customer issues and who are able to act like humans, instead of just having people who will perform repetitive tasks over and over again. So it's becoming a slightly different recruitment process where you're recruiting people based on their social and emotional intelligence rather than just on their diligence.
Thank you for your inputs, Bart. One of the things that I included in a white paper that I actually wrote towards the earlier part of this pandemic in the Philippines, one of the components is actually what I call ADD. And it's not the ADD that we know, it's actually accelerated digital disruption. And one of the call-outs really is, getting people with the attributes that you just mentioned, but also very comfortable in working with automation tools, so that the volume and the efficiency actually increases more dramatically. Since at this point in our lives and in our operations, I think efficiency in terms of service delivery has been magnified tenfold.
Absolutely.
So one of the other things that I called out in that particular white paper is actually secured business environments or self-contained environments. And I think this speaks to what Andrew and your company represent. Just fairly recently, the Philippines was on the news, and it wasn't very good news, primarily because there was a data breach. And some of the more impacted lines of business that are operating in our space are those in financial sectors and in the healthcare sector. So Andrew, could you please tell us how much activity you're seeing along the lines of, based on your own company's experience, in terms of securing work from home environments? I'm pretty certain that this is not constrained to the Philippines alone, but other countries that basically service various kinds of customer interactions.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely spot on, JDL. I think what we saw was there was a tremendous rush for home during the COVID pandemic. And everybody managed to get everybody home. And I think our PR operations have done a fantastic job of explaining how wonderfully everybody got home. But really, when you peeled back the skin, it was a lot messier than most of our PR operations would suggest. Queues of taxis, you know, and even I was talking to some of the very biggest companies in the world, the top 4 companies in the world, some of their guys, if you look at how it was reported in the media, it all looked as though they did a seamless work and they're saying, we've got 200,000 work at home. But when I talked to the guy who was organizing it, he was busy buying thousands of Chromebooks. He had taxis outside his call centers. He was taking devices out of the call center. He was having to have people use their own agents' work at home. And the point I was trying to make on that Gartner slide, because Gartner have seen this as well as a global issue. Everybody's taken their stuff, they've got it there, and everybody's saying, yep, we're working at home. But the problem is we've done ad hoc changes to make it work at home, but we haven't updated the security controls to reflect that that has moved from an ad hoc process to a kind of new normal. And what we're seeing is as people who are buying BPO resources, now they're coming in and they're doing their quarterly business reviews. And whereas they were prepared to tolerate a degree of security laxity in order to facilitate service continuity, now they're looking much more closely at how is the security being locked down. And there's a tendency for people to think, well, if I've got my central things locked up, I can control from my Citrix system how the agent can do things. That's good enough. It's not. People can attack the endpoint of your network, and if your work systems are not locked down, if your endpoints are not properly locked down, whether they're agent-owned or whether they're corporate-owned, you are vulnerable to precisely that data breach. There are going to be more of them, and it's a huge reputational risk, which is why the company that I was talking to was saying, you know, and there were 30 or 40 people in those meetings, the key thing for them was security. Because reputation is what, for the big companies, they are not prepared to sacrifice.
We can't reiterate that fact hard enough, Andrew, most especially in a country like the Philippines, who's been doing tremendous volumes of interaction for practically everywhere in the world. You know, security is on top of everyone's list right now. And that defines the customer experience. Speaking about customer experience, I'll go to Mike now. I'm quite surprised, Mike, that, you know, with the amount of voice activity that's happening in the Philippines, that Spearline hasn't really, you know, been utilized here as much as it should. You know, probably the first step in the right direction is actually introducing your company, such as the activity that we're having this afternoon. But you know, what are some of the pushbacks in terms of, you know, why voice companies or companies that provide voice services are hesitant to actually establish voice quality?
I think some don't recognize the challenges that they have. So often, you know, customer service agents are experiencing these audio channel issues. Customers are experiencing connectivity issues. At the customer level, you know, statistics kind of show only 4% of customers will give you the benefit of that direct feedback and open up a trouble ticket with yourselves. With the agents, you know, agents are under pressure to move on to the next call. So they do call wrap up. They don't get back to their IT department to say, hey, something's going wrong on all the calls from Germany. I'm getting crazy calls from Germany today. So we don't necessarily have that feedback finding its way into leadership positions. Those that do get it are those, like in my own experience, you know, if you're trying to attend a family event and you're actually outside on the footpath, you know, handling an escalation call, you want to remove that pain from your life. So those that are in that mode of operation, it resonates well with them, and they move kind of through the whole decision-making process very quickly. But the focus is there for many. For some, however, it is very much a blind spot. And I think what happens is those that recognize it and don't have it as a blind spot are quickly excelling and are kind of finding a competitive position against those who are blind to the possibility. And I think that really becomes very, very important, again, with the push for new technologies. And Bart, you mentioned the empathy and all of that we want in customer service agents. We're also trying to automate some of that as an industry with advanced call analytics and giving agents feedback in real time about the state of a customer by understanding customer sentiment using artificial intelligence and feeding back to the agent in real time. Those technologies, as well as voice bots, etc., they depend on audio quality and don't work as effectively if the phone calls coming in don't support those tool sets. So again, competitive advantage is going to fall to those who embrace the idea of quality. And I think in COVID-19 zone as well, part of that rush to the home office, a lot of IT professionals have recognized the part of the challenge there is the schools have closed as well. So kids are at home, and what are the kids doing? They're streaming Netflix or whatever, and that's competing with mom or dad who are trying to hold a conference call. So, you find situations at home now where it's, I've got a really important call at 11 o'clock and I need everybody off of the internet. So managing quality of service right down to the endpoint at home is really important. And the carriers have had to shuffle to move capacities away from the industrial estates and into the residential areas. And that sounds easy, but it's not, because when the demand patterns change drastically on networks, it takes a while for things to kind of settle. So it's complex, but it's very, very interesting. And I think those businesses that embrace the idea of proactive quality management, again, will have that competitive advantage.
I would really have to agree with you, Mike. Just for everyone's consumption on the Irish side, at the onset, we were actually just given 48 hours to react, to actually unplug everything and, basically run back to our respective homes and set up our offices. So that was the first phase. Now it's getting better. We actually have a productivity rate of about 90% across the entire IT BPM segment now. So it's beginning to settle. That being said, and I'd like to throw this to Bart, Andrew, and Mike, it's quite difficult to roll out new technology solutions given, the challenge in terms of mobility. If anyone in the Philippines is actually interested in rolling out your product's offering or your company's offering, how fast would that be, and how would they basically go about it? Bart, you want to take a first stab at this?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, in essence, it's very quick. The system setup is deployed and then it's ready to use. Our model of deployment is that we deploy a bespoke system for each client, and which gives a lot of data security. Meaning, there's no shared data, there's no shared databases. It's specific to each client. But that takes a day to set up and a day to get configured. And usually training is very, very quick. We do use AI a lot, so sometimes that needs to be trained and needs to be learned. But generally, it's very, very quick, and we've rolled out a complete system end to end in 2 weeks, including agent training and performance. So that can be very quick. I think, just to touch on the points that Andrew and Mike made, I do think working from home has made rollouts a little bit easier. I think there were a lot of IT divisions around the world and a lot of companies who were most worried about deploying new technology because they felt it would take a long time from an IT perspective. I think we've seen how fast IT departments can move when the entire company depends on it. And I think that's brought to light how fast companies actually can move. So we have seen an increased appetite for digitization, an increased appetite for trying things, because everybody was able to see, in Ireland, it was in March when there was a kind of a lockdown happening. Everybody was able to see how quickly we could all transition to working from home and how fast IT can move in those cases. So I think that's given a lot of people encouragement that they can deploy these digital services a lot quicker than they previously thought was possible.
Thank you, Bart. Before I hand it over to either Andrew or Mike, who wants to go first, I'd just like to encourage the viewers this afternoon. If you have any questions, just type it into the chat line, and we'd be more than willing to accommodate some of the questions. Who wants to go next? Andrew, would you want to take a start at this?
Yeah, I mean, usually our customers will spend 3 or 4 weeks where they're evaluating the technology, doing a proof of concept, ensuring that everything is stable and working satisfactorily. And then the rollout times will depend mostly actually upon the sort of scale of the estate that they wish to address. So if it's in 2,000 or 3,000 endpoints, then typically they would do them at around about the sort of 500 a week. So you'd get to that kind of space within a month. Our most experienced customers who'd been with us for a long time, when COVID-19 came around, they were already prepared, and we were seeing them do thousands of agents per week in terms of deployment. So those who are really on top of the technology, who've got sophisticated setup structures to do it, can do it even more rapidly. But the typical onboarding process, if somebody wants to do it quickly, that we can do it within about a 4 to 6 week period. So that's the sort of length of time.
Thank you, Andrew.
The only other point to pick up on, I think, part of what you were saying, I think, is the importance of bandwidth. That is what has facilitated the whole work at home. That is what has made all of these things possible. And certainly from our point of deployment, the key component is it's software based. So because you're shipping a piece of software, it's very rapid way of controlling your entire estate instead of shipping out bits of hardware.
Yeah, just to actually add to Andrew's point there, I completely agree that the bandwidth capabilities is something that we've seen in the last few months has become a really important metric. So, I mean, every contact center manages metrics like productivity and customer satisfaction. One thing that we've seen with some of our clients in the last month or two that they've started to track on a daily basis is connectivity issues that are happening with individual agents. And they really are starting to clamp down on that now, where they're paying for better internet connections for agents who are using, you know, mobile hotspots and things like that. And with that monitoring, I think it's something that I've heard from ThinScale and from Spearline, that remote monitoring of going from an office where there's 1,000 people sitting in the room with one internet connection where you know what's happening, to there's 1,000 people dealing with 1,000 calls or 1,000 chats, and you now need to almost monitor every single internet connection and make sure and report and understand on where your employees are having issues. So we've seen that in our contact centers, that we're now producing daily reports on here's the internet connectivity level or quality with this agent almost on an hourly or daily basis.
While you're on the line, Bart, there's a question for Edge here. Has AI capability risen to a level where some back office work or boundary changed to contact centers where they can be done quicker?
Yeah, so it always depends on the task that needs to be done. Generally, the capabilities of AI in the last number of years have risen a huge amount. So we're at the stage now where for some tasks, like for example, understanding text and understanding words, we're operating at a human level, as in it's indistinguishable from what people can do. I'm not really a huge believer that everything can be replaced by AI, but I do think that AI and automation together can replicate a lot of those tasks, a lot of those challenges. So depending on the task, absolutely, yes, it can be. If it's a task that, like I said, requires a very human element, then no, it's probably not something that you want to completely automate. But if it's a task that can be done by a machine and can be automatable, then usually AI is able to understand it to a degree where it is completely automatable.
Thank you, Bart. Real quick one to Mike. How fast is it to actually deploy Spearline?
It's very fast, Jonathan, because it is a software as a service platform. You know, we could just key in a couple of phone numbers and have a look. Some of our larger customers have thousands of numbers, you know, in production. They're like small carriers themselves, or large carriers in the case of the likes of Google. But we're happy to do a kind of proof of concept or a trial. And what I like to do with customers is ask them, where are your telecommunications teams currently frustrated? Because they would often have some kind of a challenge that they're talking about over a cup of tea or whatever, and it's constantly frustrating them. We can bring those services into the trial and help resolve those situations. And in the BPO space, it is sometimes, not always, but sometimes the case that, for example, you're there in Manila, you're supporting a customer that's in the United States. That US customer brings their phone numbers from their network provider, and they land that traffic on your circuits in Manila. So that's what we call off-net traffic. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there is finger pointing, between customers saying, well, there's problems with the service. But we think it's something to do in Manila, and in Manila you're saying, but everything's healthy here. We think it's something to do with the way your carrier is delivering the traffic. And then, of course, you've got your customer's customer who's adding another variable. Those situations are fantastic in my mind because we can lend a hand. We're happy to engage with all of the carriers involved, and we can set up multiple tests of the terminating service, the inbound service, and we can simulate different and originating points from the customer's perspective. So happy to do that, and we can turn that around in days rather than weeks. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I don't want to put our two folks who joined us in the panel on the spot, but from your perspective, Vince and JL, both your companies are known to be large service providers here in the country. How much demand for new technologies are you hearing from your clients? Vince, you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. Well, primarily our clients would be Japan. No? In terms of geography, it's Japan, US, China. So in terms of new technology, yes, definitely. Like for example, the AI, machine learning technologies. Those are solutions that are very, very common in terms of the demand that's coming in right now. They want more. They want to increase or improve productivity by introducing solutions related to AI. Automation is one, yes. And for example, well, the example today was more of I think it's text based, But in terms of call center agents having a companion like a chatbot companion is one of the things that's happening right now in Japan, for example. And with those clients, the service it's not only the usual contact centers, but serviceman, they call it serviceman in Japan. Those people who are actually fixing the machines of their end clients, for example, are having chatbots as their companion in terms of getting the right information, getting the right parts, getting everything. So that's the trend right now. Instead of calling the headquarters, they just bring in the chatbot and that's it. So that's just one example. So things like this are going to happen, but they will not replace human beings. So it's always to augment, it's always to improve the productivity. So I guess that's where the world is going tonight now.
Thank you for those input, Vince. JL?
Okay, well, right now we are seeing a lot of requirements also in the AI space, like the chatbots. And then we have a product in Point West, and it's really getting traction on the smart OCR. How do you help companies with a lot of paper records in order to transition them into digital for data analysis? So we have here companies in the insurance, companies in the healthcare, or even government who has a lot of physical documents who needs to be transitioned. And we also have here the robotic process automation, repetitive tasks that can be really augmented by a system, or those things can be given out to a robot. But with the COVID-19 pandemic, we also saw a lot of requirements coming in the product space, like telemedicine, like EMR systems, both for the local Philippine hospitals, even government agencies for COVID contact trace applications. And even in the United States, systems like telemedicine, including BPO support, helping doctors by prepping patients, providing now the customer support, I think the voice part of this one is really crucial, where probably applications of our speakers may come in play, because right now it's really, helping, how can clinicians all over the world can help basically in diagnosing, triaging patients. So there's tons of opportunities right now for both business process services and at the same time platforms.
Thank you, JL. When I got invited by Roger and Beng to do this moderation for this afternoon, I signed up because I thought it was going to be a two-day discussion, because certainly conversations like this is my cup of tea. But unfortunately, I've been informed that we ran out of time. So I would like to first and foremost thank our presenters and our panelists. So Bart, Andrew, Mike, Vince, and JL representing the Philippine side. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over to the chairperson of the Healthcare Information Management Association of the Philippines, very good friend, my idol, an institution in IT and healthcare, Ms. Beng Coronel. Beng?
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Jonathan or JDL. Okay, so this has been another interesting webinar or session. Our speakers, Dr. Bart, Andrew, and Mike, presented very good options for us to consider. I recall that when the lockdown was declared in March, everyone was really scrambling for stopgap measures so that we can provide continuity to our services. So really, there were winners like, Vince and JL presented their companies that were into the solution day one, day two. So immediately they were able to, provide the service continuity. However, a lot of the companies really were into really hopeless situation, so that in terms of productivity, we've seen low productivity amongst different companies. So, and going on our 5th month into the lockdown or pandemic, we are seeing that this situation will be on a prolonged mode. So I guess it's about time that all companies would like to consider real long-term solutions so that it becomes the new normal starting now. And I think our speakers had presented very good solutions to consider. So again, thank you very much to our speakers, and also thank you to the Enterprise Ireland, Kevin and Janine, and certainly our panelists, JL and Vince, and of course, our favorite JDL. So thank you very much, and enjoy your weekend, as if weekend matters right now, no? But anyway, thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
And
Thank you all.
everyone who's joined us, maraming salamat po. Be safe, wash your hands, wear your mask if you're going out. For our friends in Ireland, hopefully we can see you soon face to face.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Look forward to the next one, JDL.
Yeah.
This is the Irish advantage. It's innovation. It's collaboration. It's Irish technology companies driving progress across the globe. It keeps Audi out in front with cross-border connectivity. Designs the automated financial solution that lets Primark stay at the cutting edge. It harnesses blockchain technology to empower women's world banking. Lights up Philips Hue's business with innovative e-commerce solutions, and builds the intuitive project management software that ensures the Special Olympics is a runaway success. Enterprise Ireland is helping the world's most dynamic brands source innovation from over 1,000 Irish digital technology companies, helping them to compete, grow, and lead. Get the Irish advantage for your business.